my whole goal in any place that I've been is what kind of impact can I have to make it better than it was. That's it with my family. That's it with work. That's it with just even my free time is, how do I leave this better than I found it?
You're listening to What Fuels You, where we deep dive with CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business leaders to learn more about their stories and uncover nuggets of wisdom we can all use. I'm your host, Shauna Swerland, CEO of Fuel Talent, an award-winning recruiting firm based in Seattle. Today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast is Aaron Finn, CEO of SingleFile. Aaron has spent over 25 years building and leading technology companies across consumer internet, digital advertising, healthcare, and legal and compliance infrastructure. Earlier in his career, he held leadership roles at Classmates.com, where he worked on customer acquisition, analytics, and scaling consumer platforms. He later co-founded AdReady, an automated advertising company, and led it through multiple growth phases and an eventual acquisition. Across those roles, Aaron has often been responsible for stepping into complexity and helping organizations scale responsibly. He joined SingleFile in 2021 to lead the company through its next phase of growth, with a focus on clarity, execution, and building infrastructure that works quietly and reliably in a highly regulated space. Welcome, Aaron. So good to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you for having me on.
Okay, so I'm hitting you with some rapid fire. I know you listened to a few podcasts. Hopefully these ones are unique to you, although sometimes I stick with my old faithfuls. Okay, first thing you do in the morning.
Typically go for a run.
Oh, wow. Before coffee?
Yeah, well, I do have some caffeine. I don't drink coffee, but I do have some caffeine before I go.
Okay, mountains or ocean?
Ocean.
And is there a favorite app or some sort of technology that you feel like addicted to or that you cannot live without?
Probably my Whoop, which is a fitness tracker.
Oh yeah, it's so funny when I talk to execs. I'm like, there's some execs, it's almost like I don't even need to continue with the podcast. I'm like, I already know the type. You're getting up, you're running, you're on your Whoop. Are you tracking your sleep?
I am, yes.
Nice. Okay, what kind of music do you currently listen to?
That I was prepared for that one after listening to a few of the podcasts. So I've actually been getting back into sort of 80s alternative, like Depeche Mode and New Order and some of those. I just watched that Depeche Mode movie on Netflix for their most recent album. So I've
Oh,
been
I need to
listening to
watch
some of that.
that. And are you running to that?
I do. I have a playlist that I just add favorites to all the time, try to keep them upbeat and keep it running all the time.
Yeah. And what was the first concert that you went to?
It was Depeche Mode.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, in Cedar
Oh,
Rapids,
so that
Iowa.
must be extra good to watch that Netflix special.
Yeah, and it was in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, if you could believe it. So, yeah.
Wow. Okay, so if you could learn or master any sort of skill and just become an expert overnight, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good one. Probably, that's probably planning my time better. So,
I'm like, want, want. I went through
I
my head.
know.
I know when I went through my head, because that question is a good one, and I don't think I have my right answer. Or like I have my real answer, and then the one that I'm like, well, that's not that useful. Like in my head, I would want to just be a killer singer, just be able to sing any song and really create that energy around music that I love for other people. But that's
That's a
not
good one.
that
That's good.
useful. Yeah,
I was gonna
time
be able to
management would
say,
be
I was gonna say be
incredible.
able to speak multiple languages as well. So, things
Oh,
like
I like
that.
that
Just
one.
to
You
be
don't
able
need
to,
that one anymore. Our
that's
AirPods
true.
now. I can just
That's
like
true.
sit and translate.
That's true. That's true.
What is something that people would be surprised? You and I have so much overlap, business and personal. What do people not know about you that they'd be surprised to learn about you?
It's probably that I have spent most of my technical career in Iowa, but working for Seattle companies.
Oh, so you're on
So
the down low. You're like pretending you're in Seattle, but you're really in Iowa.
yeah, even going back to my classmates.com experience in 1999 and 2000, I commuted between Iowa and Seattle back then and spent a lot of time, a lot of virtual office time here in the Midwest. So
Yeah.
that's not something people in Seattle typically think of when they're talking to me about working for Seattle companies.
Yeah, definitely. And is there a habit or routine that you try to protect no matter what, no matter how busy you are, you're like, I'm doing this?
Yeah, it's really spending time with the kids. So four kids, they're older now, adults really, and a grandson now. So just trying to keep time for them, especially when you're working virtually and traveling between Iowa and Seattle. It's trying to keep time for them and their
Yeah.
events, trying to coach and do their teams and all those things. So really
Yeah.
just trying to make time for them.
What's your favorite way to relax or just completely check out or decompress?
That's a good question. Probably just with a book on my iPhone or watching a TV show. Probably just
Yeah.
relaxing in front of a movie or a show, just sitting there relaxing. Maybe having the family around and we're watching something together, but just not having anything to do basically for a little while.
Yeah. What are you reading right now?
I am reading a book on the founding of Jamestown and Plymouth, which, unbeknownst to me until I started reading these series of books, I didn't know that some of the same people that were in Jamestown were also on the Mayflower and helped found Plymouth.
Yeah,
I didn't,
of course, I did not know that.
I did not know that they were that close in time
Yeah.
that there could be the same person that was at Jamestown actually helped found Plymouth. He wasn't a pilgrim. He just was on the boat because he had the experience in the U.S. And so he helped write the
Wow.
Mayflower Compact as a result of Jamestown. I didn't know any of that until reading this series of books. So
Yeah, interesting. So you grew up in Iowa, right?
I did, yes.
And what do you like if I was in another country and you were talking about being from the United States and you're telling somebody about Iowa, how would you describe an
Mhm.
Iowan or somebody from Iowa?
Yeah, I mean, I think it gets referred to a little bit about the breadbasket of the United States. I think it really is that sort of agricultural community that has a significant amount of industry. So a lot of just hardworking. I was thinking about today's conversation. I started on a farm when I was 14 years old. I live in the city, but I had a summer job that was on a farm. So it's just a lot of people that, work hard, both agriculturally and manufacturing wise. And they're just there, with, weather that can go from 0 degrees to 100 degrees. So you have to be able to handle the changes, but it's just a very Midwestern breadbasket sort of environment from Iowa.
How'd your family end up there?
My mom is from here as well. Her parents were from here. My dad's from Iowa, but they met in college, and so yeah, when they were in Muscatine, Iowa, so which is where I am
What
still.
were you like when you were little? Like what was little Aaron like, fifth grade Aaron?
Fifth grade, Aaron.
I always said for
Um,
some reason I'm like drawn to fifth grade. I loved fifth grade, but I'm like, I guess maybe it's that show. Are you smarter than a fifth grader?
Yeah, maybe. I had a great fifth grade teacher. I remember that about fifth grade. I really liked him a lot. I can remember him today. I still speak with him when I see him. But fifth grade Aaron was probably curious, somewhat analytical, somewhat shy, probably. Tried to be in sports, but wasn't always, the best at it. But probably that curiosity, I'd oftentimes just ask my parents. My dad says it today, like random questions like, what if we just drove straight through this field? Where would we end up? Kind of thing, right? Like just a curious person wondering how things work
Yeah.
and
And
all
did you
that.
have like you talked about your fifth grade teacher, did you have role models or mentors or anyone that you looked up to when you were little?
Yeah, it's certainly my father, my grandfather, they were both around in regular parts of my life. My grandfather was a builder. My dad was a college sports athlete and worked at a local company here in town. And so really just them, they were always outside, always doing stuff, always improving things. And so, them, my mom was a hard worker and my grandma. So just the immediate family that's around those
What
bosses that I
sports did your dad
uh,
do?
he was a college basketball player.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Yeah. So
So tall.
yeah, 6'4". Yes. Yes.
That's amazing. So you consider Iowa home. Would you ever leave there? Like, what's the lifestyle like now as a executive and entrepreneur?
I have lived in Seattle 3 different times. I did move my family out there 3 separate times for 3 different opportunities at the companies that I was at. But Iowa's just always going to be home, no matter. Even when we did live in Seattle, we had a place here in Iowa that we would come back to in the summers or whatever. So, I enjoy Seattle. It would be, it's my home away from home, really. And
Yeah.
but Iowa is just where everyone is. All of our family is from here. My wife and I are both from the same hometown. We went to high school together. So um,
Oh,
yeah.
I love that.
So
And all of your kids have stayed in Iowa.
yes, they're all in Iowa. Some a little further away in Iowa than others, but yeah, they're
Yeah.
all. Mhm.
Yeah. So, and you went to University of Iowa. Did you have a sense when you were in college of what you wanted to kind of pursue or be, as far as a career?
I started in engineering, but that didn't last very long for me. So I went into business pretty quickly, and finance was my degree. And so I really like the analytical part of finance, the numbers. I've always, really enjoyed math. And so that really resonated with me. And coming out of college, I got a job at a bank being a credit analyst,
Yeah.
analyzing whether businesses could pay their loans back, which for me and the career that I have was probably the best education that I could get, trying to determine if a business had positive momentum and the cash flow to be able to repay, a loan really allowed me to look at many different businesses, look at the success or, failure of those businesses and be able to
Yeah.
analyze it from a numbers perspective.
Well, what made you decide to kind of get out of that? You were in commercial banking. It sounded like it was kind of the right fit. And then you kind of
hmm
pivoted into this whole tech world early. I mean, you were early in that space.
I did. I'll credit it to one of your previous interviewees, Derek Street. So he and I went to high school together, went to college together. He had gone out to Seattle early as a part of his corporate banking career, and he started joeaverage.com, which again, we kind of talked was ahead of itself. But this was in 96, 97, and the internet was just kind of becoming a thing, and that company was ahead of its time and failed early. But once he was done with that, he started getting consulting work and really seed funding work from other businesses around
Mm,
Seattle. And I was always interested in the internet. I was interested in Joe Average, and I likened it to the California gold rush, that if you just go participate in this market, into this opportunity, and you do good work, good things will come. And so he asked if I wanted to come out and help them start writing business plans and helping raise seed money. So I went out there in the spring of 99 to Seattle. My wife stayed home and finished her career here in Iowa, or her education, sorry. And we got classmates.com as a client to help them raise their first seed round of funding. And we did that. And we went through Madrona Venture Group, and we went over there as employees 4, 5, and 6, I think it was, with Derek
oh,
and
wow. So they're
Bryce.
like, hey, we want you to no longer consult. We actually want you to come on board and
Yeah, I think they really wanted Derek mostly because he was sort of the lead of that. And then we came over, and I had this finance degree and I knew numbers. So they stuck me watching a spreadsheet. And even at the time, it wasn't a spreadsheet. The founder would write the daily metrics up on a piece of paper on the wall. And he's like, well, you're good with numbers. Why don't you keep this marketing data up, like impressions and clicks and visits and all those types of things. And I started incorporating it into a spreadsheet. Then I started helping the VP of marketing at the time acquire customers and do marketing deals. And I eventually became the VP of customer acquisition and analytics at Classmates.
yeah.
So
What
it
was
was,
the story with classmates? Like, what ended up happening with classmates?
it ended up selling to, really the free ISP was called Net Zero at the time, if you remember Net Zero. So, but we were there 6 years. It grew from about 1 million registrants when we were there to over 100 million. It was doing
Wow.
hundreds of millions of dollars a year in subscription revenue. To this day, it still is a very profitable, very good business, and it's still around.
Yeah. And how come you decided to leave there?
We had it got gotten through the sale, so and we were looking to do other things, and so Derek and I, ended up doing some EIR work at Madrona afterwards. And since I had been running the Classmates marketing program, I had this idea that there were more advertisers out there that could afford to pay higher rates for the advertising that Classmates was buying, because we were buying all kinds of really low rate, type of inventory, and making it work for us. And so we incubated the idea at Madrona for AdReady, which was sort of this digital advertising solution, sort of ahead of its time in terms of like trade desks and things like that are out there now. But being
Yeah.
able to plug into automated advertising platforms and being able to bring more advertisers to the table.
Who were your other co-founders and how did you decide like who would do what role?
Yeah. So Derek is the other co-founder on the business side, and then we had two of our senior engineers from classmates, so Dave Sliwa and Eric Colby, came over as well. So it was the four of us, and so I like to be sort of more on the analytical background, numbers side of things. So I was going to do that component, COO. Derek was going to be CEO. He's a more outgoing. You talk to him as being a salesperson, like doing a lot of sales from raising money and things. And then the engineers were running all of the development of the product and what we were doing there. So we had been four
Interesting.
friends for our entire time at Classmates, so it worked really well.
And so you got funded from Madrona, also Khosla, right, and Bain Capital,
Yeah, they ended up in
and
our Series B, yes. Mhm.
raised a total of how much money?
Pretty close to $30 million. Yes.
Wow, that's amazing. And so if somebody's listening and they're, have the entrepreneurial bug and they're thinking about starting a business, what is the fundraising process like as far as how to know who to partner with if you've got that opportunity? What makes a good investor?
Yeah, and it's different today, I think, than it was, back in 2006. But what we looked for, Madrona was really our seed investor and our partner in all of this. And so they provided great guidance. We also had made a good network of connections through our classmates, work. And Derek was part of corporate development at Classmates. And so when we started looking, we started talking about West Coast and East Coast type of investments, and we didn't want to be completely West Coast centered from our investment, our VC portfolio. We wanted some, because we felt like we were going after a more traditional sort of mid-market to small business. We wanted some more traditional East Coast money. So we started trying to balance that out. That's why you hear and see Bain and Costa. Bain didn't have a West Coast presence at the time, and so we were trying to bring both those in. Bain was a much more analytically driven decision for them, which we appreciated. I appreciated. And Khosla obviously brought that Silicon Valley. It was just in the beginning with David Wyden and Vinod down there when they were just getting started. And
Hmm.
so with Madrona and Khosla, we thought Bain was a nice complement to that as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then how about picking board members, like dealing with a board member? I've had so many execs, as you know, many of whom you are close with and have worked alongside, but on the podcast. And sometimes I can't remember who it was, but somebody said, when the phone rings and you look at the phone and you see the name, there's either
Mhm.
like the kind of board member where your stomach turns or the kind of board member where it's like, not quite a friend, but somebody that you're looking to as a confidant and somebody that you can trust as far as advisory. What would your advice be to somebody who's trying to partner with venture and find board members?
Yeah, I would say I haven't, and this is honest. I haven't had anyone that I cringe or turn away from when they call.
Yeah, well, Dave Wyden and
All
I have known him my whole life. He's the best.
He is the best. And there's times, where advice has come from board members that we didn't take and we should have, looking back on it. There's times where, we did take and we shouldn't have, looking back. It's like it's everyone's in that as a partnership, right? And I really believe that. I really believe at the board level and at the whole company, everyone is only trying to build something out of nothing, basically. And how do you do that? And all you can do is draw on your past experiences and things that you've seen and decisions that you've made before. And so I've really appreciated everyone's approach to our board, and they've been nothing but extremely positive. It's from a venture capital perspective, you're really choosing them when you're choosing their investment, right? And you're doing that analysis because they're going to be a part of the organization. And it's not just them, it's their teams as well that often get involved. A lot of the
Hmm.
time I'm not just talking with the one board member from PSL or from Foundry or from, I'm talking to their teams and the people that are doing other work or people that could help us. And so it's that whole picking independent board members is different as well, right? You kind of need everyone to agree to that. Independent board members, can come from names in the industry that you're trying to participate in, or people that have built something at scale that maybe you haven't had that experience or rounds that out. And that's, I think, where there's more nuances in choosing independent board members than maybe the investors themselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how about kind of building a culture? At what point did you and Derek and your two other co-founders think through what mattered to you as far as setting values and just kind of your mission statement, all of that?
Yeah, that's, that's for me, that's always something that's it's hard to create, it's hard to force, maybe is a better way to describe it,
Yeah, it
right?
has to be organic.
It has to be. And I know I've seen, cultural statements and words and, everything sounds great and everybody wants to live up to all those, but there's a natural undercurrent in the organization of the type of culture that exists, right? And it's partly based on what the mission of the company is. It's partly based on the customers. It's partly based on, the people obviously that are working at the company. And so like classmates, it was a very reunion driven older customer, and so the culture and everything underneath the organization was all about that, about reconnecting people, reconnecting, your 10-year, your 20-year, your 30-year class reunion type of thing. We had an event in Vegas where we brought our customers together for a national class reunion, right? And so you're talking older people, but that's the way the culture in the company was, to satisfy those, older customers with a more technical driven approach. At AdReady, it was all about, sort of the small business customer and their needs. And so that culture stems from being able to deliver those things at scale. And so I think it draws from that. Overall, probably the one thread that runs through everything is data driven. Everything, any of the companies that I've been with has been extremely data driven in terms of how is each, workflow, working, how is, what's the return on investment for these various projects. But, in terms of culture, I think you have to be curious, you have to have data,
Yeah.
and you need to be able to kind of work with ambiguity, building something from nothing.
Yeah. No, those are all really good lessons. But you've been through, I mean, at all these companies, it sounds like really just kind of in prepping for the podcast. I'm like, you've been through a lot of the, acquisition, post-acquisition, how you integrate businesses and culture. What are the things that you personally are like find are most important that are like, I just don't want to lose this XYZ quality of the culture that I've built or that
Hmm.
feels important?
That's a good question. I know probably the empowerment that building these companies creates in its employees, that, you know, you've had the experience of bringing this idea, this business to life and making it work. And when you're purchased or trying to integrate, you don't want that empowerment to wane, right? You don't want to stifle that. Like that's the point of growth and trying to get there and build a bigger and bigger business at any given time. And so, I think it's really that empowerment. It's
Mm,
losing that, I think, is what can sort of slow down or deflate the momentum that an
yeah.
acquisition usually has around it. And so you don't want to lose that. You don't want to lose that
Yeah,
momentum.
totally. So how did it feel? So you were kind of operating as COO and then you came in later and you were the CEO
Hmm.
and chairman of AdReady.
Hmm.
How was that experience? And like, describing yourself as kind of more analytical, was it challenging or kind of different to put on the CEO hat?
For me, it was. I never, again, wanting to be sort of more on the COO, CFO side of things than the CEO side of things. The story, though, that we were telling with AdReady was really coming from the experience I had running the marketing program at Classmates. So the product and the technology were driven based on that experience. So I was the sort of user of of our product as well. So that helped in that situation. I think become CEO and tell the story. Obviously, it's managing the expectations of everyone else around and the board itself. And so, and I did that for several years, but then we got to a point after the Series B where, it was I call it very frothy Series B. We had multiple firms competing against each other. I tell the story that I had John Doerr call me from Kleiner on a Saturday night to talk to me about taking theirs versus Bain Capital's money because it was such a frothy Series B, and having to make those difficult decisions and get through there, you really just make the best decision and get the team excited about it, and you just keep moving, right? So that for me was a natural progression to, that Series B and on. Once we got there, we spent about a year doing that. We kind of hit a plateau. We grew really fast and we hit that, sort of 50-person plateau. You had Carl Siebrecht on the podcast as well.
Yeah.
Um, we found him through mutual connections through Madrona, and he had worked at a ad tech company, in a Quantiv, and I knew it was right to bring him on board from where I was. And so brought him on to work with for about a year, and then he took on the CEO role. So
Yeah.
I inherited it and then passed it on to someone that I thought could take us to that next level. Ultimately, it didn't
Yeah.
quite get there, but it's have a certain role and you just step into it and you
Yeah.
make it work.
In retrospect, when you look back at your AdReady kind of the full life cycle of that experience, do you feel like that was a success, or is it like, because it's so hard to talk to entrepreneurs, had so many friends and just clients that you're like, oh, this one's the unicorn. And then suddenly it's like, wait, what? How did that happen? Or ones that you're like, I was never expecting this to kind of, become something. And then it becomes the unicorn. Like you just kind of really don't know. A lot of it's timing and luck and teams. Does that feel like a successful experience?
Personally, I don't because, if you hear me talk normally, I lost millions of dollars of investor money in my mind, right? We did, right? When I look at the experience and what was developed and what continued to work for years to come for customers and the partnerships that we had, it was, right? And the connections that were made, it's hard to, I can remember days where different decisions could have sent us in a more upward trajectory that didn't, I even remember a day where we were getting fairly close to due diligence with a potential acquirer, and I was in a conversation in a parking lot over on West Seattle. I remember exactly where I was, and they asked me for a cap table and one other piece of information, and a valuation. And I was nervous on how to answer that question. And I just know my board was very like, you have to anchor high in these conversations and all this stuff. And I didn't want to really anchor anywhere, probably, like,
Yeah.
but, so I gave them I gave a statement that was, there was an acquisition recently in the industry that had basically put a very high valuation on a non-revenue based company. And I said, I mentioned to the acquirer, I'm like, you're going to have to use that as sort of a comp, not meaning it had to be that dollar amount, just meaning we're going to have to be valued in a way so trying to play the, middle there and just, say, hey, we have high expectations for the company, but, please, give us the best offer based on the industry. That was the last conversation I had with them.
Oh,
They turned,
yeah.
they heard too high a valuation, I guess, which I didn't even say a number. And they stopped talking to us. And in 6 months, they launched a competitive product, and on we went.
Yeah, such
So
hard lessons. It's so hard to know how to navigate those things. And so you ultimately left and had a few different experiences really on the marketing side in different industries, like large, office furniture, complete pivot,
mhm.
right? And I'm curious what that experience was like and how you went kind of the marketing route.
Yeah, well, marketing sort of existed because when I went to Classmates, I got stuck becoming head of customer acquisition marketing for classmates.com, right? And so that was just that sort of online customer acquisition experience is what I gained. And so that carried with it into, so I was in Seattle looking to come back after having brought Carl on board to AdReady, the new CEO, and moving back to Iowa with my family so that my son could start high school and all that. Because we were in Seattle, we had moved to Seattle for AdReady, and I was there a couple years longer than I promised my wife we'd be there. And
Yeah.
so back in Iowa, where I'm from, Han Office Furniture is one of the largest employers in it's a multi-billion dollar furniture manufacturer that's based here in my hometown. And at Needle in the Haystack, they were looking for their first director of e-marketing position at this company that my grandfather had worked at for his entire life.
Oh,
And
wow.
and I applied for it, not knowing if it was exactly appropriate, and got hired there to be their first sort of create their e-marketing program. And just and for me, it was a fantastic insight into a much larger publicly traded company and learning about traditional marketing, loyalty marketing. Just, they have customers that they've had for, decades at this, and they run these programs, these loyalty programs that have been around for like 35, 40 years now. And
Wow.
so having that B2B and that traditional B2B experience was invaluable to kind of where I am today. And so it really worked out well.
Yeah. That would have been one though that could have easily just been kind of like, okay, honey, we're home, we're back. You could have just stayed.
I could have, yes, I could have. So when, transitioning, I stayed on the board of AdReady while I came back and provided that role. And once the company, it was clear that they weren't going to sort of break out of that sort of growth metric. It was, what are we going to do with AdReady? And I, they were just going to, I think, sort of just shut it down. And we still had customers. There was still revenue, millions of dollars of revenue at the time. And I said, and I asked Mike Han, I said, I need to go back and have AdReady have a soft landing, basically. I need to go do this for the people that are there, for the customers, just for myself. And Han said, yes, go do that. And once that's done, if, you know, let us know if you want to come back, and we'll see if there's a role or a position for you. So I went back to AdReady to really sell it, to, provide that soft landing, to try to get some of the investors, some of the money back, and, and provide those jobs for the people that were there. And so we did that. We sold it to an ad network in New York. I say for pennies on the dollar relative to the investment, but it still exists today, I believe. It's been, since 2006 now. And so
Wow.
I did that, worked with that company that acquired it, worked for them 6 months to a year or so. Really enjoyed that New York experience, had to commute between Iowa and New York for 6 months or a year. And then came back to Han and ended up taking on the full marketing role there for a period of time.
Yeah, such cool experiences. And then over the next few years, like I would say between the years of like 2017 and 2021, you did
Mhm.
CSATs, People Connect. What were you like in your head if you were like, gosh, I could just kind of wave my magic wand and have the perfect role? Was it in marketing for you? Or were you just kind of like, that's what people are gravitating toward when they saw your background?
Ye- Yeah, so going to CSATs was Derek bringing me back to another company of his and really wanting to help drive that more analytically driven customer acquisition, that marketing program. And so this was not only health systems, but also their patients and trying to acquire patients at an optimal rate. I probably sit and exist well in analytically driven customer acquisition or go-to-market strategies. If you that,
Yeah.
so that's kind of what's underlying the current of everything is, what is this business need to do to generate revenue? Getting back to even the commercial banking days, how do you pay this loan back? How do you grow this business, right? What do the numbers say, and what do you need to do to change those things? And so if I could do anything, that would be it, is really coming into a business, analyzing it for its strengths and weaknesses, really from a pure numbers perspective, for your finance perspective, and then helping create the changes in those that drive more revenue, more profitability, or more growth. So
Yeah, but that's an incredible skill to have. I mean, every company could use someone like you. I was like, I mean, I'm in my head, I'm like, ooh, Aaron, like, can you come help with these? If you're
mhm.
employed, you've got your job, but it's so interesting because the titles are just titles. And then when you do dig into your background and dig into what you've been doing, that is kind of the throughput there, right? Really driving to those almost like efficiencies too, right? Like how do we find more profit?
And that's when I went back to People Connect, that's really classmates. So if you look at my career, I've really only I've gone back to places that I've been in the
Yeah.
past to help them do the things that I was successful at doing there from before, right? Like, so figuring it out. So
Yeah.
people connect. I went there. The CEO at the time, Abby Heller, he was someone that I had hired on the analytics side of my team at Classmates early on. And I was looking after CSAT sold to Johnson and Johnson. I was looking for the next thing to do. And he said, do you want to come back over here and help, improve the go-to-market and the marketing program of Classmates? They're private. It's a PE owned company now. And so did that and then ended up sort of helping and becoming basically the CEO there for an interim period of time during COVID and helping them transition it into People Connect into one organization. And so that was quite an interesting time trying to basically take a 200-person company, cut it in half, and integrate it into a new company in Southern California, all virtually in a year.
Yeah.
So that was quite
That's a lot. And single file, I know obviously out of PSL, Pioneer Square Labs, you started there 2021. What about the company or problem that you were solving drew you in?
Oh, yeah. The subscription revenue of this industry that we're working within is some of the most profitable, longest life customers that I've ever, like the average life for our subscription revenue is like 17 years,
Oh,
and it's
wow.
highly profitable, like 80% margin, gross margin. And so it's just one of the and there's a lot of cash flow, a lot of private equity
Yeah.
in this industry. But what PSL found when they were incubating the idea and they were talking to law firms that utilize these services. They're filing and registered agent businesses, forming an entity, form qualifying it in another state, filing your annual report, receiving your service process. They found that the industry is about 200 years old, and the two larger players, in the states aren't that technically advanced. And so, SingleFi, I believe, was one of the first venture-backed companies in this industry. There's more now, but it's really trying to disrupt a 200-year-old industry with more modern
Yeah.
technology.
What does single file do exactly?
Yeah, so what we do is we help modernize what is traditionally compliance work in the back office for legal entities and legal entity management. So from forming to form qualifying to staying compliant within Secretary of State filings, all those things, receiving, you said you're in 27 states, then you have to have 27 addresses in each of
Oh,
those
it's a
states.
huge pain in the ass. Like this
Mhm.
part of the business, it's exciting, but I'm always like, oh, can't like AI. Like, I mean, I'm not the one doing it, but I feel bad because the people on my operations team, it's a heavy lift. And even if like sometimes a client will call us and they might just need, one contractor. So it's like doing the analysis of like, does that even make sense to set up in this state for one employee versus, other states where we have 30 employees or 50 employees.
Right. And the rules and requirements of each state are so diverse, so bureaucratic, right? If I showed you a list of the annual report due dates for each state, which don't match at all, I like to say no human should have to remember any of it,
Yeah.
right? That's what computers are here for. That's what AI is here for, like you
So
mentioned,
who's
right?
the right customer for you?
And so our ideal clients are those that have, large number of entities in single state, or maybe fewer number of entities, but in multi-states, right? Where that compliance burden, that sort of keeping up with when tasks are due,
Mm-hmm.
receiving those government notices, knowing when to pay the right annual report fee or franchise tax, when that becomes a burden, when it's not a single one or two, that's really our ideal client. So some of our happiest clients, I like to say, are our largest clients because they have hundreds or some of them have 3,000 entities because they're, let's say, real estate investment firms, and every asset
Mm,
in their portfolio is an LLC, right? Is an entity. Um, we have
interesting.
we have like, vast spans of like healthcare offices that are spread out across the country or whatever. And so it's really helping utilize what I just refer to as modern technology to help a very often overlooked sort of back office, manually done compliance need. And
Hmm.
our goal is to really sort of bring together all the compliance rules and requirements around the globe into a technology that allows you to very easily say, should I go to this should I go into this jurisdiction or this city? Should I not? What would the cost of that be? What's the strategic value of doing this or not? It's really taking compliance from a burden and making it a strategic asset to
Yeah.
companies.
And so what's the business model? How do you guys make money? And am I the right target? Like that's what I'm like, whoa, maybe we should be doing business together.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're in 27 states, the person that's handling that for you probably has them written down in a spreadsheet and has to remember. And we just take all of that off. And we don't charge, it's really consumption basis. We don't have a platform fee or any other, it's all based on those services and filings that you need to do within each state. We charge a fee. And typically our fees are at or below industry average. The industry is very opaque in its pricing. The same service can range from $50 to $550 for the exact same service, depending on whether
Mm.
you have the knowledge of what the pricing should be. And so part of what PSL saw was bringing transparency to this industry and bringing technology to really have an impact here and being able to take. We also have, law firms are oftentimes where you go to form a new entity, and they are often choosing this partner, this vendor for you. And so, in part of the work that was done incubating the company, they spoke with Wilson and Cooley and DLA. They all thought there was such an opportunity to improve this industry. They all invested in SingleFile as well. So we have 6 Am Law 200 law firms as investors because they're a partner of ours, and
Oh, that's great.
yes.
What
So
part do you think of compliance is kind of underestimated, or that people that aren't doing that job underestimate? Is it that the timing and the laws and the rules and everything's different among each state? It's the tracking part of it, or that it's like there's regulations that would be surprising?
the complexity and the manualness of it all.
Mm,
So I
mm-hmm.
like to tell a story. The story I kind of tell the future hopefully is like if you're a Delaware, oftentimes people are forming their legal entity in Delaware, right? Especially, that's sort of, where if you're gonna be a public company or you're gonna grow, Delaware has, sort of the lock on forming your legal entity. You often hear now in the press about Texas and Nevada coming up and competing with Delaware, but Delaware just has such a history of good business courts and practices that's where oftentimes your first entity is formed. But let's say you're a Washington company and you form your entity in Delaware, you have to foreign qualify in Washington to do business there, correct? Well, part of foreign qualifying in Washington, you have to go to Delaware and get a stamped PDF that says you're in good standing in Delaware, and then bring that physical document over to the state of Washington and give it to them so that you can foreign qualify to do business in Washington, right? Transacting a PDF in today's environment, right? I like to say, like, what is blockchain for in milliseconds of confirming that your entity's in good standing in Delaware, right? There's no reason people should be having to pass paper around or,
Yeah, it's
quote
crazy.
unquote, quote unquote paper around in these types of things in, today's environment. And
Yeah.
so the complexity, the manualness, the bureaucracy of it, everyone has different rules. So the federal government has to every few years produce a report that says how much paperwork burden the federal code places on the economy. So federal code is every rule or compliance need that you have, even as individuals. So taxes, Medicare, but all the business rules that they have to file with the federal government, including taxes, EINs, all those things, SEC, any of those things. The last estimate, it was 10 billion hours a year of paperwork burden. That's
Oh,
not
geez.
that's not buying equipment to purify water or whatever. That is just filling out the paperwork.
Yeah, it's just straight up like moving. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
stuff, that's the part of the business that I literally, thank goodness, don't have to do, but I just can't stand it. But I get nervous because it's like all the risk is on me. And it's like if something like doesn't go
Yes.
right, it's super, super scary. So looking at where the business is today, like where is the business? What stage are you at? And I guess what feels different about this experience versus your other life
Yeah.
and work experiences?
Yeah, so we closed our Series A last year. So we have about 50 people all working. We're growing at 50 to 100% a year. That's been going steady. This year is really a breakout year for us to get to the end of that Series B level. So we're pre-Series B right now. And the thing that's different is it's not a B2C kind of company that I've been familiar with. It's more B2B, and it's much more manual, right? It's much more ripe for disruption, honestly. If just as even you're talking and what your teams have to do to keep you
Yeah.
compliant, it's just, it's just been overlooked, and it's been something that's been, you know,
Those are
um,
the best industries and best, areas for tech to disrupt.
mhm,
The areas where it's like, oh, the thing that you're like, oh, wait, someone does do that. Someone has to do that. That it's just,
mhm.
it's not the sexiest of the sexy, but it's the necessary, and it's the stuff that the CEO loses sleep over because it's the risk stuff and the
Mhm.
compliance stuff that can really get you if you're not handling it properly.
Yeah, if you talk to attorney, right, if you're in a middle of an acquisition, you have to be in good standing in every jurisdiction you're doing business in. And oftentimes, if you're out, you could have missed a jurisdiction. You could have, it was written in a spreadsheet somewhere, but the employee left, and you're scrambling at the end to figure that out, pay back taxes, back fees, whatever it might be.
Yeah,
It's important. I call it an often overlooked, and it's so manual that it just is ripe for issues. And
yeah,
it doesn't need to be, right? We don't, all of that federal code, all of each state code, every municipality code, right? You go all the way down to the city and the county levels. Those things all should be able to be learned by computers and technology, right? And, AI is making that easier and easier every day to sort of, I think that's one of the things you look at legal tech and what it's doing and disrupting. This is just another component of that. And compliance is just something that, doesn't need to be so manual and error prone.
yeah, absolutely. And so, how would your current team describe you as a leader?
Hmm.
That's
I
a
mean,
hard one because it's like, well, my
it's been
aspirational answer?
Yeah, no, no, I think I can answer that. The main thing that's driven through all this is they'll tell you, I think, that the best way to talk to me is with data, right? And show me what the history has been, where we need to go, and then why what you're doing is going to get us there, right? And so I really, really wait a lot to current and past performance, right? What is our current trend and what does it need to do to change, right? And so that's probably the number one thing they would say is that's the easiest way to talk to me. The other way is really just understanding that, we're building something brand new, and it's going to be challenging. We're not always going to know the right answer, and we need to keep trying. We need to be curious. We really need to know how high we need to jump or the mountain we need to climb and what resources we need to do it to get there, right? And so have a plan, come with a plan, that type of stuff. And
Yeah.
you know, yeah,
I think that that's a good way to think. When you're making decisions, is it all data or is there an aspect of gut?
there's some, I think obviously there's always some gut, right? Because you wouldn't build something brand new or unique if it were always just data, I don't think, right? You've got to figure out how to make that leap, how to change that process. There's at Han, manufacturing driven company, they use an RCI process, a rapid continuous improvement process, right?
Mm,
And those are, when you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in a product line or whatever, small changes make a big impact, right? And so any rapid, any small improvement, and you do that multiple times, it compounds quite great, quite a lot. In a startup, it's less about the incremental improvements and more about those leaps that you need to make, but you have to still be as rapid and continuous about those decisions and those how much impact you're going to have as you do in a large company with, smaller impacts, right? And so
hmm.
I think you just have to have this mindset is, yeah, we're here today, but we need to be twice this by, 12 months from now. So what are the things we're going to do to really challenge ourselves to get there?
Yeah. I love that. Love that. And then I think a lot of it comes down to how you communicate it. Like, are you clear in your vision? Does everyone know what direction we're going? Even if it was a different direction than I, kind of shared last week, we're kind of pivoting. But if we're pivoting, is everybody going in the same direction? And do we have the buy-in to do it? which I think comes from a little bit of perspective of leading and understanding how important it is to communicate effectively. Is there anything now that you would say with with the perspective of your whole career to look back that you kind of appreciate now more than ever?
Yeah, probably just doing the work in those days that seem, to struggle or to you're not going to get there or, there's a lot of, I heard a CEO speak once. He's like, his emotion and attitude at home was how well the business was doing, right? And I certainly learned that over my career, right? Like when you're in these environments where you're trying again, you could be losing money, you're trying to build something, that hasn't been built. It's a roller coaster sometimes, right? And so you get really frustrated and time, but once you've been through that and you can look back on it, you're like, those are the times where things actually happen sometimes more positively, right? And so trying to be, if I could go back, I'd go back and be calmer probably, and try not to get so emotional, with the business itself. But those hard times are actually, looking back, I think sometimes where you make more improvement than some of the better times, I think. So.
Oh, yeah, that's the learnings for sure.
Mhm.
And so my final question for you is what fuels you?
It goes back my whole life is to leave something better than I found it. I mentioned my grandfather and my father, and like he was a builder and he had properties, and he was always appreciative of, people that would leave something better than they found it, right? And so my whole goal in any place that I've been is what kind of impact can I have to make it better than it was, right? And so I would say that's it. That's it with my family. That's it with work. That's it with just even my free time is, how do I leave this better than I found it?
Thank you for listening to the What Fuels You podcast. If you'd like to check out past episodes to hear from more business leaders, go to fueltalent.com/podcast. And if you have a minute, please leave a review and rating on your favorite podcast app, or share this episode with a friend or colleague. Please share any feedback or interview suggestions for other guests by sending a message to podcast@fueltalent.com. I'm Shauna Swerland, and thanks again for listening.